Hey guys, in this video I'm going to answer a few questions that you guys asked me in the comment section. The first one says, "Hi Fire and Blood, I'm a huge fan of yours. I have a question. In season 1, when Viserys dies, Dany says that Viserys was not a true dragon, as fire cannot kill a dragon. Dany is a true dragon, fire cannot harm her. But fire did harm Jon Snow in season 1. What does this mean? Is he not a dragon Targaryen?" Great question. Let's first take a look at the clips the viewer is referring to.
He was no dragon. Fire cannot kill a dragon.
On the show, Dany is immune to both fire and damage by heat. In the books, Dany does not appear to be fireproof. George R. R. Martin stated that her ability to survive Drogon's funeral pyre was a special circumstance, a blood magic ritual involving fire and blood. Only life can pay for her life, so burning Mirima's door in the funeral pyre was enough to awaken the life in the dragon eggs. So as far as the books go, Dany is not immune to fire, and surviving the pyre was a one-time thing related to the dragons. Under normal circumstances, Dany is no more immune to fire than any other human. Her brother Viserys once claimed in the novels that Targaryens were a race above other men, immune to both fire and illness. That was blatantly wrong, given that multiple Targaryens in the past are well known for having been burned to death, and many have succumbed to common illnesses over the years, including grayscale. Viserys' comment just highlights how little he knew about Targaryen history. It does appear that Targaryens seem to have a slightly higher heat tolerance than average, although TV series. Still, this is nothing outside the normal human range. Centuries of history have shaped the Dornish to be more comfortable in the dry desert heat, and shaped the Wildlings to be more accustomed to a cold climate. In fact, when Dany rides Drogon out of the Great Pit of Meereen, she is stated to have burns and blisters on her hands from the flames through picking up the egg. It could be argued that she displayed this ability again when she has her dragons burn down the House of the Undying, although it's possible that the dragons managed to aim the fire past Dany at Pyat Pree. Notice our clothes are intact after this incident. The most glaring, however, is Dany's stunt at the Temple of Dosh Khaleen, from which she again emerges sunburned. She knocks over the braziers at the center of the temple, setting the entire building aflame, burning alive all the calls. Eventually the doors collapse and Dany emerges naked and unburned. So to summarize, Dany is not fireproof in the books. As far back as 1998, author George R. R. Martin has made a point to emphasize that Targaryens, including Dany, are not immune to fire. Yes, she survived walking into a gigantic pyre and emerged unscathed. This was a one-time occurrence, according to George R. R. Martin, and had less to do with her Targaryen surname than it did the effect of blood magic she was invoking. Khal Drogo's pyre was more than just a cremation. Dany was burning the witch Mirima's door. This blood sacrifice, along with the magic of her dragon's eggs, created a perfect storm of sorcery that left her unburned. However, Dany is completely fireproof in the TV show. Okay, now let's take a look on another clip the viewer mentioned in his on fire. Jon's intervention saves Lord Commander Mormont's life, and it gives Jon his Valyrian steel bastard soul Longclaw out of his gratitude. Just like in the books, Jon receives serious burns on his hand after grabbing the lantern. This is clearly depicted in the show since Jon appears with a bandage on his hand later in the episode. George R. R. Martin's book, A Game of Thrones, even goes into more details about the severity of the burns. He had burned himself more badly than he knew throwing the flaming drapes, and his right hand was swathed and still halfway to the elbow. At the time he had felt nothing, the agony had come after. His cracked red skin oozed fluid and fearsome blood blisters rose between his fingers, big as roaches, Martin writes. Long story short, Jon is not resistant to fire. So is this clip the evidence that Jon is not a true dragon? Jon's hand burned, and true dragons don't burn, or at least that's what Dany said in season 1. Therefore, Jon is not a Targaryen, or at least that's what some popular theorists claim. It should be pointed out that even if Dany is fireproof in the series, there is no indication that all Targaryens are, as most fire-related deaths the house has suffered are mentioned as being similar to those in the books. This sets another layer to Viserys' death. Dany was realizing that the heat and fire did not affect her like it did most people, and correctly suspected that Viserys lacked this resistance. Targaryens seem to be somewhat more tolerant of extreme heat and high temperatures than other people, though they are by no means invulnerable to fire, or at least not all of them. There's a lot of confusion amongst Game of Thrones fans about the supposed Targaryens' fire resistance. Targaryens are usually hurt by fire according to what we know from the show and the books. Dany is the unburned, she's the one who cannot be hurt by fire, and actually she can be hurt by dragon fire in the books. In the TV series, Dany shows heat-resistant qualities a number of times. She picks up hot dragon eggs, gets in scalding bath water, survives being burned alive 2 times. Other Targaryens are not fireproof, they can be burned. Here's an example. King Aegon V Targaryen, once known as Egg, became convinced that only dragons could he force the lords of the Seven Kingdoms to accept his decrees, that granted freedom, rights, and protections to the small folk. This led to the tragedy of Summerhall, an event that resulted in the deaths of King Aegon V Targaryen, his son Prince Duncan Targaryen, and the legendary knight Sir Duncan the Tall. Targaryens most certainly can and have been hurt by fire through their history. So to answer your question, Jon Snow is not a Stark, nor even a bastard, but the son of Rhaegar Targaryen who was legitimately married to Lyanna Stark. He's a Targaryen and he's an heir to the Iron Throne. Some might say, but if the Targaryens, or at least most of them, are not fireproof, how come Jon is not somewhat tolerant of extreme heat and high temperatures as Targaryens usually are? That might be because he's a not pure-blooded Targaryen. He's a result of both Targaryen and Stark blood. Jon may not possess every power that a pure-blooded Targaryen like Dany possesses, but make no mistake, he certainly has the blood of a dragon. Let's recap. Targaryens are not immune to fire. Dany is the only one who is resistant to fire, at least in the show. Jon Snow is a Targaryen and he can be hurt by fire. Let's get into another question. Anna Johansson asks, what's the real meaning behind House Stark's words "winter is coming"? For something as complex as Game of Thrones, I refuse to believe it's just a weather report. That's a great question. Winter is coming is the motto of House Stark, one of the great houses of Westeros. Each of the noble houses of the Seven Kingdoms have their own official family motto or words. These usually take the form of boasts or threats, used as battle cries such as House Baratheon's words "Ours is the Fury", or House Tully's words "Family, Duty, Honor". House Stark is a major exception in that, unlike most other houses, its words are not a boast or a threat, but the ominous warning winter is coming. Most of the major houses have some words that are supposed to represent them and their reputation in some way. As reflected on by Catelyn, yes, Catelyn agreed. The words gave her a chill as they always did, the Stark words. Every noble house had its words, family mottos, touchstones, prayers of sorts. They boasted of honor and glory, promised loyalty and truth, swore faith and courage, all but the Starks. Winter is coming, said the Stark words. Not for the first time, she reflected on what a strange people these Northerners were. The meaning behind House Stark's words is one of warning and constant vigilance. The Starks, being the lords of the North, try to always be prepared for the coming of winter, which hits their lands the hardest. The inevitable truth of the words are mentioned by other characters, such as Maester Aemon, who occasionally notes that sooner or later the Starks are always right. This was proven in the Winds of Winter, when autumn is ended with the coming of a white raven. Jon Snow remarks that his father, Eddard Stark, was bound to be right eventually. The second meaning is that the Starks themselves are winter poetically, and that this is supposed to be an intimidating motto for the enemies of House Stark. This was invoked by Arya Stark after killing the members of House Frey who participated in the Red Wedding, instructing the women she spared to tell people that winter came for House Frey. The third meaning, one that is long forgotten even by the Starks themselves, is that the White Walkers may return in the winter, and that the realm must always be prepared for such an event. A deeper metaphorical sense can also be found in the motto. According to George R. R. Martin, it more generally expresses the sentiment that there are always dark periods in each of our lives. And even if things are good now, summer, we must always be ready for a dark period when events turn against us, winter. This is why Ned Stark always warned his kids that even though times are currently good, winter or dark periods are coming. The next question we are going to answer is coming from Sophie Emma. If Euron kills Yara and Theon kills Euron, is House Greyjoy officially extinct in a few years? Sophie, excellent question, and although it's all ifs and nothing is confirmed, it's quite possible that Theon will end up as the ruler of the Iron Islands, and if he does, House Greyjoy might go extinct within the next few decades since he cannot make children anymore. With Yara and Euron not surviving the Game of Thrones, and with neither Yara nor Theon having heirs, House Greyjoy will survive for as long as Theon lives, basically meaning that House Greyjoy might go extinct within the next few decades. However, I have a theory that Theon already has an heir of his own. In the second episode of the second season, aboard the Myreham, a ship taking him to Pike on Robb Stark's order, Theon paid visit to the captain's cabin which he has taken for his own. There, he met the captain's daughter who awaits him in his bed naked. After a bit of small talk, she helps Theon unlace his breeches, whereupon they had an intimate relationship that in this theory resulted with a child. Even though the show itself has not provided any clue whether or not Theon's adventure with Captain's daughter resulted with a child, in the books Theon mentioned multiple times how confident he is that he got Captain's daughter pregnant. So if Theon ends up the only surviving member of its house, House Greyjoy will go extinct before too long if Theon doesn't already have an heir he doesn't know about. The last question I'm going to answer is a short one, and it's the one most fans have of late. When do you think Season 8 trailer will drop? The official trailer for the final season of Game of Thrones will definitely drop anytime now, especially with HBO's For the Throne marketing campaign taking over New York and LA. That's as accurate answer as it gets, but if I'm to make a guess, I'd say the trailer will drop on December 21st, the first official day of winter, but take this guess with a grain of salt. Okay, this will do for this Q&A video.